right, good morning session. For those of you that I don't know, my name is BJ Rogers. I'm work in the Community Initiatives Department and serve as an assistant liaison to the Miami community with Dr. Tammy McReynolds. The folks you're going to hear from today are from Miami-Dade Animal Services. Talk about their Adoption Ambassador program. If that doesn't sound familiar, then as I hear all too often, you're on the wrong plane. You might want to deplane now. Usually I'm on the right plane, but most of the time. Before we start, I was just curious for the agencies in the room, how many of you have active foster care programs at your organizations right now? Great. And what primary populations of animals do you use foster homes for?
Kittens.
So kittens,
Puppies.
young kittens, puppies, so underage neonates.
Adult dogs.
Adult dogs for,
Special needs.
We are a foster age program, so we actually don't have a shelter for our adoption dogs.
okay, so everybody,
Yeah.
okay.
We put in special needs as well.
Special needs, so behavioral and medical.
Hospice, yeah.
Okay, great. And how many of you have what you would describe as a program where you place animals directly from foster into new homes? Okay, so I think what you do. Great. All right, we can give you a sense of what people know or what people are working with and not. As you listen to the presentation today, I'd love for you to think about, particularly for those of you who are not yet using foster as placement, when that little voice goes off in the back of your head saying, yeah, that wouldn't work for us. That wouldn't work in our community. That wouldn't work in our agency. Jot that obstacle down. Sort of keep a chart with two sides, and in one column, jot down those things that come up for you as obstacles to direct placement from foster. And then as you hear opportunities, see benefits, exciting things, keep those in the other column. And when we're done, we'll kind of use that information to spark some of our conversation. So without further ado, Luis Mendoza is Customer Service Manager for Miami-Dade Animal Services and the FEAT Coordinator. That stands for something. It has to do with foster care and events and things of that nature. So I'll turn it over to Luis, and his colleagues, Kathy Labrada and Michael Leva, are here as well. So there'll be great resources as well. So,
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here and have this training session with you guys. My name is Luis Mendoza, and I'm with Miami-Dade Animal Services. And what I'm going to be presenting today, it's a fairly new program for us that's really been successful. And it launched at the beginning of this year, and it's called the Ambassador Program. So you guys are maybe somewhat familiar, but we'll give you like our take of the tale. Mike, you want to come on board? Is this supposed to be on, by the way? Okay. Alrighty. So I'm with Miami-Dade Animal Services, and I like to consider what we have going on right here as an ASPCA partnership. We have specific positions in our unit where we work with volunteer coordinators, adoption counselors, and live release coordinators in our building. And all those different positions, they really make up this program, and they assist me in delivering some of the things that we're going to be discussing here. Now, this is one of our foster parents. And here are some quick facts about Miami-Dade Animal Services. We are open admission shelter, and we receive about 32,000 pets every single year. On a daily basis, it's about 100 to 200 pets. And during peak times, it exceeds over 600 animals. Now, our busiest months are the summer months because of the cat breeding season. And one of the solutions that we have is a foster care program. Now, most of our animals that come in are 80% stray. So that's a big challenge for us. So when I was first hired, I remember speaking and having a conversation with my director. And I like to think myself as a member of an administration that's fairly new, about 2 years old, and we're very innovative. I think we have a good leadership foundation, and we're all full of great ideas. And I remember my director telling me that, you know what, your mission is just to change the perception of the shelter and increase live release. Now, we've done this in the past 2 years, and we've done a lot of dramatic changes. And some of the programs that we've implemented are TNR. Some of the other programs were the foster care program, volunteer program, and a lot of different things like that. And all these things have kind of like built this program that we have going on right here, which is the Ambassador Adoption Program. Now, the Foster Ambassador Program, just to shed some light on how it started, it's a community-based program that's the way that I like to call it, because it was pretty much led by volunteers. Now, the volunteers in our shelter, about a year and a half ago, when I started working with that particular program with Michael, they started having, specific thoughts and opinions, and I like to think that people in Miami are very opinionated. So my first perception was just to listen to them, and a lot of them had a lot of different ideas. And like I told you, our director, he's very open-minded, so whatever we can throw at him, he's going to be willing to go ahead and pursue it. Now, one of the things that we started encountering as far as like the volunteer base, they wanted to go ahead and do this foster program. And this is something that's been going on throughout, every single shelter nationwide. But they wanted to push the needle forward, and they wanted to not only do the foster program, but kind of become ambassadors for the program and find the adopters. So basically what the ambassador program is, it's pretty much an indispensable tool for us, and it's basically a tool that we use for animals that are not ready for adoption. A lot of the animals that we receive are neonates. A lot of the animals that we receive are pregnant mothers that just gave birth. A lot of the animals that we receive have behavior issues, or sometimes, they're just not eligible for adoptions. So what the foster program does, it allows them to rehabilitate, and, it allows them to get in a home where they get that trust factor with humans, because they probably lost that at one point or another. And they learn how to socialize with other animals, with other people, and in situations like that. Now, the good thing about the actual foster ambassador program is that the way that it started is we, at the beginning with the foster program, and we've done about 1,000 fosters so far, it started exclusively just by events. And when we were looking for ambassador adoptions, we were out there and we were reaching the community, and we were just trying to kind of build this community and just have as many ambassadors come forward. And what we did is we built a foster ambassador program that's alleviating the overcrowding situation in Miami-Dade Animal Services. And not only that, but it's addressing the medical and behavior issues and providing attention to these animals that have a lot of injuries and would not be good for adoption at the moment. Go ahead. Now, the main objective of the program is to pretty much tap into the foster volunteers that we had at the moment and just kind of use them and get these foster parents that already have the experience and the knowledge and just have them just do other things for us. So what we did is we empowered them, and we gave some of the burden of the problems that we face as a shelter, and we gave it back to them. And what we did is we're just keeping all the animals out of the sheltering system, and all this is being done while the adoption process is being created outside of the sheltering system. So what it's doing, it's increasing the health, the way that the animals are healthy. It's increasing shelter space, and it's providing exposure for the animals. I like to think of our ambassadors as a marketing tool, and they're out there constantly just marketing some of the things that we're trying to push forward. Now, this is one particular flyer that we use to kind of recruit individuals, and this is posted on our Facebook page. And we have something similar to that when we give T-shirts to some of our ambassador program members. Go ahead. Now, this is how the program works. So the first step, as far as the foster program, they are contacted by a foster care coordinator, and we identify the animals that we want to place on our ambassador program. And this is done with our actual database. I'm not sure what type of database you guys use, but we use Chameleon in our shelter, and we already pre-select every single animal that we want to place in our ambassador. We try to focus on the high-risk animals, and the animals are neonatal or the puppies or the ones that are too young, but we do open it up to animals that are seniors and things like that. Now, what we do is we contact potential fosters by email or by phone, and this is also done automatically. Within our database, we have an automatic email system set up where whenever we select an animal, we already have identified foster parents that we've categorized in different levels. Some of them like to receive maybe 6 or maybe 5 or 4 animals at a time. Until they reach that point where they have 0 fosters, it keeps shooting out an email to them. And then they respond, they send a response back, and then that's when we start the process. Now, the ambassador parents, they ultimately decide what they want to bring in or what they want to take in. And we obviously want to give them that leadway because we don't want to overburn them. Now, once that happens, they come in and they pick up the pet. And then after that, that's when the foster care and the foster care coordinator and the actual ambassador individual start interacting a lot. And at this point, what happens is they sign an agreement and a waiver. And what we do and what we're responsible for is providing food, shelter. Actually, what they're responsible for is providing food, shelter, and love. They have to constantly keep open communications with us, so they're interacting with us at least once a week or maybe twice a week, depending on the age of the animal and the seriousness of the illnesses or the behaviors. At the same time, what they do is they administer all the medication, and they transport the animals from ASD or from their location to our actual facility. And we give them all these different type of care packages and these rules that they have to follow with us, and they have to meet with us every single 2 weeks. Go ahead. Mike. Now, step number 5, this is the foster care folder, and this is provided for them to ensure that they have an understanding of the obligations and some of the collateral that they're going to need to push these adoptions forward. So some of the things that we give them is shelter contacts, so they're able to contact the medical staff if they need to. They're able to contact me or maybe another supervisor. At the same time, we give them the foster release documentation. We gave them basic information about the animals. This could be as simple as a medical history, some of the information that was recorded during intake, and we give them all the medical records. At the same time, we start establishing every single appointment that we need to establish. Sometimes when we're dealing with neonatal kittens or puppies, we start establishing maybe 3 to 4 appointments in advance, because this is something that we obviously is a big challenge for us and we encounter right there and then. And at the same time, we give them best practices and usages of social media platforms or web technology that they can use to kind of start the process and push these animals forward. Okay. Go ahead, Mike. Okay. Now, the adoption process. The adoption process, it pretty much starts with the marketing push by the ambassador parent. And what they do is, I was actually going to show you on here, they go on YouTube and they start placing videos of these animals. And these are either like type of things that they've captured from the pet, whether it's a behavior profile or something like that, and they start posting on Facebook. And they post it on YouTube. They use social media platforms. They use Craigslist. They use adoptapet.com, and that's all filtered through our actual website. And they start posting all these things, and this is how they start networking. At the same time, what they do is they network these animals within their inner circles. So they network them to their friends, through their families, and things like that. And at other times, we take them to offsite adoption events. We find that's one of the best places where they can start the process, because they do a meet and greet there, and then they start communicating with individuals, and then they just give them a business card or a palm card of the animal that they're interested in, and the communication continues from there. Now, at other times, they just meet at their own accordance, and that's where the process starts. Go ahead. Now, at the time that the actual foster parent finds an adopter, what we start doing is we start taking all the information in, and we do the adoption contract electronically for individuals that have access to internet. And this is the same adoption contract that we have in our shelter, and we give the same exact documents that we give in our shelter, the medical records, everything that we need to do. Now, at the same time, for individuals that don't have internet access, we mail everything to them. So this is all mailed to them, and we take an electronic payment. So at no point do the individuals come to our shelter unless it's really necessary. We've only seen this kind of occurrence with individuals that really don't have any internet or don't have any access to technology, and they come to our shelter and they pay us like that. But this is the way the adoption process works. Go ahead.
Never meet the adopters in some cases?
No, we trust our foster parents, yes. Our foster parents, right now we have about 40 ambassadors, and they come from a core of about 300 foster parents. So what we tend to do is any new onboarding foster parents that we have, we give them maybe 4 to 5 adoptions that they can do with our mutual agreements. So what we do is we take them into adoption events, and we start building the relationship from then. And then we start bringing them into the shelter. But between the 4th and the 5th adoption, we let them branch out, and we let them find their own adopter. And then depending on how that goes, we either cut them off there if we have a negative experience, or we continue. But our foster core for ambassadors, it's really, really concentrated. And right now we're only focusing on about 7 different individuals a month. So it's very slow pace, because we have to give them a lot of different collateral and a lot of different material. But next year, what we're trying to do is we're trying to do 10 ambassador onboarding parents at the same time. But that's the way it goes. Now, the recruitment process is a little bit different. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get everyone to join the movement. Like I told you, this started from our volunteer base, and we have a pretty good volunteer base right now. But we use a lot of different things as far as recruitment. We use social media flyers, and this is posted all over social media. We have a volunteer program, and the volunteer program is once a week. And right after that, we have foster orientation. The foster orientation, we offer it twice a week, because we have a huge volume of individuals that are actually interested in doing that. At the same time, we partner up with animal advocacy groups, and they have web pages. In our particular area, we have one particular group that has about 30,000 members and followers in their Facebook page, and it's called Urgent Dogs of Miami. Now, when I first started this program, we had a bit of a clash because they didn't really know who I was and what the program was about. But a lot of those volunteers and a lot of those administrators are part of our volunteer corps. And then we started explaining the situations and the things that we're trying to do. And then we're pushing the envelope forward and we're putting all the collateral on there. At the same time, we do the foster orientations. And like I said, we do this twice a week. We do this on Wednesdays and Fridays. And we're constantly tapping into the talent from our volunteer corps. One of the things that I'm in charge of is events. So we've done about 30 events this year. And we do a lot of different partnerships with local and national groups. And we do it a lot with different type of universities and different type of technical schools. So what we do is we have them do flyers for us. So we kind of tap into the aptitudes and we have them do these different things for us. So if you notice, go ahead, Mike. These are different things that we use as far as like recruiting processes. And we have plenty of them. These are just two of them. But these are the ways that we're recruiting our individuals. It's by word of mouth. It's through social media and all these different ways. And at the very end, what we come to find out is that it's very rewarding. So when we get one particular parent or we go to one university, they start spreading and then they just keep pushing it forward and they pay it forward. So I think this is a really great thing for us. Now, these are some of the milestones that we've had this year. The program started, it started on January and we started recording all the data from then. And over the past 8 months, we've had about 250 adoptions. And the program really started when we were tapping into the P-Tree grant, and we needed to kind of show what we were doing for the program and show, where these ambassador adoptions were coming from. So we've actually done about 56 large dog adoptions, about 146 puppy adoptions. That's always the biggest number pretty much everywhere. But the great thing for me is we've done about 40 kitten adoptions, and that's really hard for us because we have a hard time just placing cats overall. At this point, we have about 30 to 40 ambassador parents. And the great thing about the ambassador program, before we had this, we were doing adoptions with the foster parents. But the average time that we were taking to do an adoption, whether it was at an event or it was we were doing a transport, it was taking a lot longer. So we were placing these animals out of the sheltering system, and it would take us about 40 to 50 days to have a successful outcome. At this point, with the ambassador program, since we have another individual doing all the work for us, it's taking about 35 days because they're really pushing it, and they just want to follow this vicious cycle of placing one animal and then placing another one. At the same time, we are working with ambassador parents in a tri-county area, and we have about 30 surrounding cities where we have different individuals that are ambassadors. And this is a demographic that I really like to study because we have seen situations where we have foster parents that are not able to foster anymore. And if we have another foster parent within that city, it's just as easy as them calling them and saying, you know what, I'm having this emerging situation. Can you take care of my foster? And then at the same time, they start networking within their inner circles, and they start pushing these ambassador adoptions forward as well. Now, like I said, some of the focuses that we have are neonates, sick animals, nursing mothers, and large breeds. This is actually one of our dogs that was in the ambassador program. He came in with a horrible skin condition, and that's how he wound up looking. Now, what we've noticed with the ambassador program, at the very beginning, we had a very slow start, but now it's kind of like leveling out. And our average ambassador adoptions right now are anywhere from 30 to 40 adoptions. And we're hoping to maybe increase that number next year, at least 50 every single year. But the trend is keeping up.
Every month?
Every month, yeah. And the trend is pretty consistent. Go ahead. Now, this is a different flyer that we use for recruitment purposes. On here, you'll find my name, and you'll find another individual that helps me out with this. And you'll find the volunteer coordinator's name on here because he also helps me with this as well. Now, these are some of the challenges that we face. Go ahead. And some of the challenges that I've noticed. The medical support for us is a big thing. We provide the basic pet care for the animals, and we provide obedience classes for the animals. However, sometimes we need that extra step, and I think that that's a huge challenge for us, and that's something that we're trying to work on. And what we're doing is we're trying to build a foster base just from veterinarians. And right now we have one veterinarian on board, and he kind of helps us out with situations where we have a serious medical condition, and some of our other foster parents, they go there, and he subsidizes some of the services, and he helps them out because we could only treat so much at our shelter. Another thing is training and training support. The training support is a big thing for us because the program, it's pretty much growing at a rapid rate and it's blowing up, and we only have X amount of individuals kind of like facilitating this end in our shelter. So what we're hoping to do is bring in more individuals and just expand some of the collateral that we're giving them. We're giving them basic collateral right now. It's very helpful, but I think we need to push the envelope. On some of the classes that I've seen and I've attended on here on this conference, I like the concept of having a hotline. That's something that I would like to implement for our ambassador program. And there's a lot of different things that we have as far as like surrender prevention programs that I've also noticed in here that I would like to implement there. But the training support is something that we can definitely improve on, particularly in cleanings and disinfecting. I think a lot of people don't have a clear concept of what that looks like and how to handle maybe neonatal animals or pregnant mothers. And this is something that we try to utilize the ASPCA for, and we go online and we print out some of these flyers and some of these collaterals. But I think just having an extra individual or having more members to spend that quality time with an individual one-on-one goes the extra mile. So training support is something that we notice as a challenge. The next thing is the marketing of the program. We're obviously trying to inspire the community so they can become involved, but sometimes we run into roadblocks. So we're obviously trying to push this forward, and we're trying to do more events. We're trying to do more community outreach, but we need more individuals to be involved. What I'm hoping to do next is kind of tap into our volunteer corps and have them just do most of our events rather than us doing them, and just having them push the envelope as well. One of the cool things that we do is we give our foster parents t-shirts, and it's a marketing tool for them. So they're walking around with a t-shirt that says, "I'm a proud foster ambassador parent." And other individuals see this and they stop and they ask questions, and some of the marketing starts from there. But I think we need more innovative ideas like that to kind of push the program forward. And then the last thing, like I said, it's increasing participation from volunteers. I think our volunteers are doing a great thing, but we obviously need to start engaging the community a lot more, and we need to start visiting maybe churches or synagogues and just having these type of connections with them. We already have the event placement in place, but I think we need to just grab them and kind of trickle them into our foster program and just push it from that point. And at this point, if you guys have any questions, go ahead, Mike. You can go ahead and ask us. So these are some of the pictures that we do. This is me at one of the public speaking events that we have. I'm literally holding a flyer from one of our foster programs, and I'm talking about what we do as a shelter. Over there we have an adoption event, and this is a meet and greet session from one of our ambassador individuals, and she's actually wearing the shirt that I'm telling you about. And what they do is they go out there not with the intention to adopt, but to the intention just to kind of meet the individuals and have a feel for them, and then push the adoption from that point and not involving the shelter. Go ahead, Mike.
We have a question over here.
Sure.
How many ambassadors ended up adopting the animals they were fostering?
The ambassadors, actually, that's only coming from our regular foster care individuals. We have right now approximately 70 to 80 foster failures, but you're talking about 1,000 fosters that we've outcomed already. So it's really a very minimal number.
And Joe over in Charleston calls that their proud adoption failure club.
Yeah.
Peggy, what is,
Foster failures.
Yeah.
Foster club.
and that he's even a member of that
Yes, he
proud
is.
club.
Yeah, all of our staff have t-shirts, proud foster failure.
Yeah. This is another picture of me actually doing an event for, I think it was a commissioner's event, and they had all their kids there. And one of the things that I was telling another individual here, we're building a school curriculum, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to do a proactive approach on some of these methods that we're using to try to increase live release rates. And one of the things that I'm highly involved in is going out to the schools and just impacting these children and just telling them that they can, go ahead and volunteer with us in the future, or maybe telling them the importance of fostering rather than adopting, because they get the same experience of loving a pet and things like that. Go ahead, Mike. This is another picture of some of our volunteers. I would have to say that more than half of these individuals are actually foster parents, and the commitment that we get from them is unwavering. They're at every single one of our events. They're promoting every single foster initiative that we have. They respond to every call to action that we have through social media, and this is one great opportunity that we have as far as the volunteer program, how it transitions from fostering and then to ambassador program. Go ahead, Mike. And then this is just another picture of us visiting another school. And for every one of these events, I typically either go with another ambassador adopter or another foster parent, or I take one of their pets and I start discussing where this pet is coming from and what's the whole purpose behind the placement of this pet and how we're doing it. And a lot of these kids are actually very interested because they never heard of a concept like that. They don't even know the concept of adoption. So I think, speaking about these type of programs, it's really rewarding and it's really nice. And that's pretty much my presentation.
Questions back there?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you go for it.
I'm curious, do you have in the adoption, the foster adoption, the foster ambassador program, which
Uh-huh.
is different than the foster program?
Mhm.
Do you have opportunities for someone that might not be able to have the animal physically, that they could be the ambassador for an animal at the shelter and promote that animal personally to be adopted?
Yeah, it's actually a funny story. The way that we started with our ambassador program, like I said, it was through a volunteer basis. But we started with individuals sponsoring adoptions for some of the animals because they didn't want to physically have the animal, but they wanted to sponsor the adoption and they wanted to market the animal through social media and through websites. Now that program, it actually went well for the first couple months, but then we were overwhelmed with the amount of sponsored adoptions that it kind of fell through the cracks. And then we started running into challenges where people were kind of using the program to try to kind of deviate. Since we're an open admission shelters, we only have X amount of time to kind of have this animal in the shelter. So they were putting this money into the animal to try to increase the likelihood of the time span that it's spent at the shelter. So we kind of did away with that program, but we had a lot of takeaways. And then eventually what we did is the foster program. Now the foster program is really good because it kind of funnels a lot of different things and it feeds other programs that we have. One of the programs that we have is a transport program, so it feeds that. Another program that we have is events. Right now we've done about 30 events since last September, and we've yielded about 700 adoptions. And these are just different things that we're doing with that particular program. The last thing that we invented was the ambassador program. And the ambassador program right now stands at about maybe 250 to 265 adoptions. So the foster program itself, it's the core. That's where we get the actual individuals that we want to train and the individuals that we want to empower. And that's how we start everything through the foster program. Yes.
What are the logistics behind the actual adoption of the animal? So mostly, I mean, my major concern would be those payments of
Yeah.
adoption. How do you guys facilitate those so it's always done honestly and making sure that it's done properly?
Well, we don't outcome any animal until we have the payment. So we have to receive the check by mail, or we have to receive the credit card. We use an electronic authorization form. Most people like to do it that way. But we don't do anything until we receive that. Now, the foster parent, what they do is they do their meet and greet. Well, they start marketing the pet through social media. They do their meet and greet, and they start collecting this information. Now, the foster parents, I tell them that, they have to make the individual aware that they're collecting information that's very sensitive. So this is information that we retrieve afterwards, and then we have their actual license. We have their information, and we give them a follow-up call. And we ask them before we charge a payment, hey, you know what, we're going to charge a payment from you. You're doing an ambassador adoption. Is this okay? You met with so-and-so. Afterwards, what we do is we grab the receipt, we grab the adoption package, the medical records, and we send it to them via email. That's the best method for me, or by mail. And then we confirm receipt of submission. So they typically say, yeah, you know what, I got it, and everything's good. And then we do follow-up calls, and that's mostly placed on the foster parents. They send me a lot of pictures of some of the outcomes that they had. And I would have to say from the entire scope of the foster program, the attrition rate for the ambassador program is the least. Like, we've seen more return rates from some of the events that we host. It's not very high, it's very minimal, but by far the ambassador part of it is the best one. I've only seen maybe a handful of animals come in, and this is from the 265. Yes.
I can see an obstacle for us being how busy our foster parents are, and I was wondering how you streamline the training process of helping them learn how to do a proper adoption and find a suitable adopter.
Well, the most of the training comes from the orientation. We went from hosting just one orientation bi-weekly to hosting a weekly orientation, and then doing 2 orientations every single week. So whoever has to take a refresher course, they typically come in. But at the same time, what I wanted to show you is some of the Facebook pages that are led through our volunteers, where they have about 800 followers. And what they do is they post a lot of material in there. And they post material from the ASPCA. They post some things that we offer as far as a shelter. For the adopters, what we offer is free consultations for every adopter that adopts an animal from us. And they go see a vet. Obviously, it doesn't include any type of prescription medication or anything like that. It's just a basic evaluation. At the same time, they start posting obedience training material that we have available for them. And they start posting a lot of these different things. And then, we have our head foster ambassadors where they really take the initiative and they start training people. So whenever we want to refer one individual that's coming in and it's maybe interested in doing neonates and has never done that and it's only focused on adult dogs, we refer them to them. And they have no problem in doing the training sessions. And then they go to their houses, and that's how they do it. Yes.
Do you have mandatory stray holds?
Yes.
So how do you get around that? Because where I live, the shelters are saying that you couldn't do a foster ambassador adoption because the animal has to come into the shelter during the stray hold period.
Well, none of our dogs. It's a rare event where we send out an animal that has a stray hold into the ambassador program or to the foster program itself. But for puppies, we only have a 1-day stray hold. So it really doesn't make a difference for us. For cats, we don't have an actual policy. We only have them for dogs that are adult dogs. And it's a 5-day stray hold if they have any type of identification. But the good thing is that we need to start the process early because we find out that for adult dogs, it takes me longer to find an actual foster. So by the time that they're coming into the shelter, we start kind of selecting the animals that we want, and we label them as possible fosters. And these emails start shooting out. And at the same,
all of those animals spayed and neutered before they
yes, that's one of the things that we actually track, the sterilization compliance. And our sterilization compliance from our foster program, it's actually at 84%, which is a huge number. And that was one of the first things that I wanted to track as far as measuring a success from the program. But what we tend to do is before we send them into foster care, we try to already sterilize them if they're age appropriate. The ones that we don't do, and the ones that maybe that 60% that's not sterilized are the neonatal animals, or the animals that are just not ready because they're sick or they're injured or something like that. Yes.
So I have 2 questions. Do you know what the average length of stay for these animals in the adoption ambassador? And do the adoption ambassadors, do they take another animal? That's 2 questions.
Yes. If you guys want, I can bring some of my binders and some of my material. I'm not sure, who uses Chameleon here? I can show you some cool things that we've done with Chameleon as far as tracking some of these things, and you'd really like it. But as far as the time span, we went from the foster care program that funnels a lot of different things from a 50-day average time to maybe 30 to 35 days with the ambassador program. And the repetitive rate for the actual individuals that are doing this program, they're very serious about it. Like I said, we only train maybe 7. It sounds like a very dismal number and a very small number every single month. That's if we get 7. But those are individuals that are committed and dedicated, and they keep doing it. We have one foster parent that's done maybe about 80 ambassador adoptions.
So you
Yeah.
have these little mini adoption centers. at
Yes,
home.
yeah. She actually has a puppy palace at home.
What?
She has a puppy palace.
Oh, nice, I love that.
Yes, yes.
How do you train spotted feeders for neonate kittens in your adoption program?
Well, that's,
And how do you give them the expectancy that those little neonates might not make it?
well, I mean, before we do the neonatal foster adoptions, I'm very frank with them and I'm very honest. And I tell them that there's a huge mortality rate with neonate kittens. But we do offer them the resources that we have. And some of the collateral material that we have are just brochures that we grab from the ASPCA. And then another huge resource that we have is this one individual that works with us. She used to work for the Cat Network. Her name is Cindy Hewitt, and she had previous collateral, and she's made herself open to other individuals that wish to foster as a lifeline or a hotline to kind of get advices. She is amazing. At the same time, we've kind of already networked some of the other individuals that she knows, and they do the same thing. But the main thing about the foster page is that other individuals, they start reaching out to other foster parents rather than reaching out to me or another individual that works at the shelter because they understand that we're just too busy. We try to respond to every single email, but sometimes we can't. So what we try to tell them to do is follow these threads, follow these different training materials, and rely amongst each other. Because if you have a question, you can most likely find an answer from another ambassador parent since they've already been experiencing that. And the good thing about the ambassador program, it's not non-experienced individuals. These individuals already went through the program. We kind of already built that trust factor, and we're letting them do this for us. Yes.
Do you give the foster parents the autonomy to set standards on the permanent adopter?
Yes.
Or do they have to stay within your parameters?
I like to say that I turn the cheek a lot. So what I allow them to do is I allow them to pre-screen. There's a certain level of discretion that I allow them to do. Obviously, you can't be biased or anything like that. But most of them, they send me applications, of pre-screening applications that they have. And sometimes I tell them, like, you know what, this is not necessary, but I really do appreciate them. And a lot of these individuals, they start posting these on these pages, and they use a lot of this collateral, and we allow them to do that. And it's never been an issue at this point. Yes.
In other groups who've run similar or identical programs, they found that the animals tend to be adopted to people who never would have come to your shelter or may not have even known where to go to get
Yeah,
a pet.
that's actually a really great point because
I was going to ask if you're finding the same thing.
yes, we're actually not centrally located. We're in an area where if an individual lives down south, they won't be able to reach a shelter. Like I said, one of the main things that our director told us to do is change the perception. That's exactly what this program is doing. We have these individuals with palm cards, business cards, shirts that are marketing the actual animal, and they're having meet and greets in parks all over the county. And at times, we find that they're just extending the adoption rate for us. Whether they adopt with an ambassador program or not, they're actually pushing the envelope forward because they're educating the public to say, you know what, you can visit our shelter if you don't find a pet with us. Yeah. Anything else?
What kind of staffing allocation do you have to manage the program?
Staffing as far as management? It's only one. Yeah, I'm it. But at the same time, like I said, I rely on the ASPCA grant-funded positions. The volunteer coordinator, he helps us a lot with the recruitment process for some of our kittens. The adoption counselor, she helps us a lot as far as like educating an individual on how to process an adoption and what that process looks like. And, showing an individual what animal behavior traits look like, what they should be talking about with an individual. Should they be discussing things like, what, do you live in an apartment or not? Just things like that, just kind of probing these questions. Our adoption counselor does that. And at the same time, we use our live release coordinator, which is Cindy Hewitt, as a huge resource to kind of help us with that as well.
I'd like to insert something here. Miami-Dade Animal Services sees 30,000 animals a year. I'm one of the national senior directors for the ASPCA, and this is one of the most understaffed, underfunded, crappy buildings I've ever been blessed to work in. So your question is really pertinent here because this Adoption Ambassador program is like one of those old pyramid schemes that we all used to come have a party in your house, will you please sell this product and get other people to sell. They really do build a top experienced level of foster care people who know what they're doing, who've been doing it for a very long time, to do the next training and recruiting and to kind of connect in a very organized way. This is an example of programs, not just the foster ambassador program or the adoption ambassador program, that are done on a shoestring in terms of actual finances and actual staff, and yet it is keeping animals out of the crematory. Literally by the thousands, these programs that they're doing, keeping animals out of the crematory every year. So it's a real good testimony to stepping out and saying, I'm going to try this. I don't have perfection. I don't have all the money and staffing that I need, but I'm going to try this.
Yeah. And just to give you like an idea of some of the, like one of the biggest challenges that I have, it's basically we have an inventory within an inventory in our sheltering system. So we have this, what I like to call a virtual inventory that's not part of the sheltering system, and it consists anywhere between 175 to 200 animals at any given moment. So some of the challenges that I face, and when I was first kind of starting this program, and I was actually looking at Austin, and I was looking at different models, I was honestly overwhelmed because I'm like, I can't do this at all. And one of the biggest challenges was the medical upkeep of the animal. But that's why I asked you guys, just start tapping into the resources that you have. I found myself having conversations with Chameleon and some other database programmers for days and just really asking questions and, kind of doing conference calls with individuals in the West Coast to see what they're doing. And at the very end, we developed this foster program that really allows me to kind of manage everything electronically. Like I get instant messages as far as like this animal needs medical care. So I don't have to have an individual looking at an animal by a case scenario saying, does this animal need DHPP? Does he need his rabies vaccines? That he needs to be sterilized? All those things are led through our actual Chameleon database. So maybe if you guys want, I can show you what that looks like and you'll really like it. Yes?
Do you have cases or have you had cases where the foster family or the foster parent is so restrictive up here that you've had complaints that someone has applied to get that animal and been turned down by that foster home?
Through the ambassador program, we haven't had that yet, but we've had that like in the foster program right now when we're first trying to transition a regular foster parent into an ambassador. And they're kind of getting the feel of what that looks like. So what we try to do is we try to diffuse a situation by kind of offering a different animal. And since we have such a huge variety in our shelter, we wind up having some sort of a negotiation between the individual that's ticked off and the individual that kind of created that problem, and we diffuse it that way.
So your foster families bring their animals back to the shelter. The foster ambassador program.
They don't bring them. Yeah.
Bring them back.
Our foster parents, they bring them back to the shelters. Not so long ago, we had an experience with our cat intake where we no longer took in cats. So we're kind of feeding our adoption processes through the foster program. Right now, we have about 120 animals in our foster care system that are just cats. But the foster care program also feeds the events. So they kind of do come back to the sheltering system through there. And they also feed the transport program. So at one point, they also come back to the shelter because of that.
So what happens if your foster family, I'm sorry, what happens, I love this program. What happens if your foster family finds somebody to take that animal? Can they then move into being an ambassador, or do they come back to you?
Well, it depends. Like if it's the first time around, I don't let them do them. I tell them, you know what, you need to come into the shelter. I'm going to meet the individual because I don't have that trust factor with them yet. I don't know what they're doing with them. I remember at the beginning, I saw like a posting on Craigslist, because we do use Craigslist, and it is kind of useful. A lot of people, they have a lot of negative connotations. I really don't. And we noticed that one of the individuals that was first transitioning into that, we actually wind up suspending this individual. They were selling the dogs. So we try to follow up. So, when we're telling them, post them on Pet Finder, post them on adoptapet.com, on Craigslist, we ask them, what, they send me kind of cues, and they send me, screenshots of what they're doing. And I'm able to kind of monitor them. And every once in a while, I just go on the website just to kind of,
Wow.
look at these different things. Yeah. Anything else?
Use logistics at all to try to manage your ambassadors?
As far as the inventory level?
Your foster is saying, put a task, we have X amount in need of foster care, and your foster parents can look on logistics or sign up for that?
No, we don't have that. We use our Chameleon database. What the Chameleon program does for us, when we actually determine an animal, whether it's going to be an ambassador adoption, whether it's going to be an event adoption, or it's going to be a transport adoption, it automatically shoots us this mass email to every single one of our individuals as part of their program, and it already notates where we want them. I actually found out when I wasn't notating where I wanted them placed, I had more problems because individuals weren't clear and they weren't given directions on what the possible outcome might be. And that's when we started running into roadblocks. So at this point, we have Chameleon kind of shooting out an email, and they already have them placed. And then people just respond, and they already are aware that this animal is going to be part of the ambassador program.
It did that.
Yeah, it does that.
Does it
Yeah.
through-
Yep, it's same thing with the medical records. You can have Chameleon tell you what the actual pet needs, and then at the same time, you're able to track your inventory. We have this inventory log where we're able to see what's the state that the animal's already been in the sheltering system as far as the ambassador program or the foster program. We're able to put on there whether the animals needs to be sterilized or not needs to be sterilized. We're able to see every single vaccine that we've given them on every single date, so it's stamped. And we're able to see if we're following that series. That's really important for me when we're doing transports now and I find it very great for us, because a lot of these transport receiving agencies, they have requirements as far as saying, you know what, they need 2 booster vaccines or they need 3 booster vaccines. So I'm able to track that a little bit better.
Is that like forecasting for your treatment records?
It kind of is. It kind of is. But the system does it for us automatically, so it's a lot easier for me. Before I had that, I literally had to do every single animal one by one, and I would actually miss things, and that's when things fell through the crack. Yeah. Anything else?
Can you talk about how you acknowledge and recognize the volunteers? How you sort of reinforce their participation and, what kind of appreciation stuff?
At this point, we don't have like an incentive program, but we are actually coming up with a concept to kind of incentivize the fosters that we have. But what I like to think is we have a very open relationship between me and the foster parents, and I think the fact that they're doing this, and I'm actually bending backwards because I work maybe 6 or 7 days a week, and I'm always available for them. I think that's enough reward for them to kind of continue the program. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a model where we're expanding the actual toolkit that we give them when they first do an ambassador adoptions. We're trying to come up with a model where we're giving them recognition plaques, things like that. We're really trying to think outside of the box to kind of expand the program, and that's where we're at right now. Okay.
For other folks in the room who have, who do some placement from foster care, either in a full program like this or a little more kind of case by case, I'd be curious to hear what some of the differences are in the programs that you're administering versus what you've heard today. How things vary from the model you've heard about today. Earl, did you say that Charleston does?
We do. We have ambassador program, and we use our program more for dogs that aren't doing well in the shelter. So we foster, of course, neonate puppies and kittens, but we don't. If the foster family says Miss Jones wants to adopt this puppy, then we just have them come to the shelter, and we do it through the shelter. But we have dogs that just don't do well in the shelter. They're too shy. They're, for whatever reason. Our medical care cases we don't usually put in our ambassador program. They usually go to foster to adopt. So we put them on our adoption floor. The people fill out the foster paperwork, and then once the animal's adoption need or the medical needs have been met, then they're able to adopt that animal. So we do that a little bit different. But it works well for us because there's just some animals, cats, dogs that don't do well in a shelter environment. And so the foster families take them, work with them, and then obviously just like your program, they do the whole adoption. They promote it on Facebook, Craigslist. We're not afraid of Craigslist.
Yeah.
I heard what you said, same thing. A lot of people go, Craigslist.
For us, I'm not sure if you're an open admission shelter.
We are.
Okay, well, for us, it's really hard because we receive just too many animals. So the ambassador program, I really try to tailor it towards animals that are neonatal, the animals that are high risk, the animals that need that extra rehabilitation and that need that extra attention. So we actually do encourage our ambassador parents to kind of take those animals. And then everything else we kind of try to do through the regular foster program because they're easier situations. We obviously don't want to grab a foster parent that's fresh and new off of orientation and kind of stick them with a pregnant mother that's just nursing or something like that, or an animal that has a skin condition because they don't know what to do. So the ambassador program, we like to do that because they already know what to do, how to dispense medications, what symptoms to look for. They know about animal behavior, things like that. So we kind of use it in that way. But I'm happy it works for you too.
Works great though.
Yeah.
I mean, and we actually, when people say they want to be a foster, we ask them, do you want to be a regular foster? Do you want to do neonates? Do you want to do medical issues? Or do you want to be an ambassador?
Yeah.
And so we start new foster families out in our
Yeah.
ambassador program. But we're not giving the tough cases.
Yeah.
We have over 300 neonate kittens in foster care.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, we do it the other way around. The way that we do our program is we like to already start setting the foster parents with specific animals because I feel like the development and the training and sequences winds up producing a really good ambassador foster parent.
And we have the same success that you do. These people
Mhm.
As soon as they get their one dog adopted, we're ready for another foster dog. We're ready to do this again.
Anybody else who's doing this or similar work with some variation?
A variation of it is our kittens who are in foster that are all ready to go. They've had all their vaccines, spayed and neutered. They go to the PetSmart that we have a relationship with on the weekends. So they're Saturday and Sunday. They get adopted out of there by adoption counselors. So they never are in the shelter.
One of the things that is really exciting to me as I listen is this sort of natural shift to extending the walls of the shelter, getting these animals not only out of an institution where it's higher risk of disease and behavior impairment issues, but engaging your community to help you with your job. And it's happening quickly and slowly and insidiously, and just, I love hearing this, the different ways that you guys are doing this.
Yes.
Can you also go into your relationships with the rescue groups who also take your foster animals?
Well, when we first started the foster program, it really wasn't tailored towards rescues. I believe that rescues should be doing rescues. And what the director of our shelter wanted to focus on is just adoptions. So we wanted to focus on the community and having the community adopt. But we do have a built-in relationship with them. We've seen situations where they request a specific animal, and we've given it to them in the past, and we still put it through the foster care system. We have no problem with that. I don't think we've had a negative situation yet with any rescue groups. I think we've done maybe 10 or 12, and I don't think I've gotten any opposition from the rescues, because I think they kind of understand that they should just keep focusing on rescues, and we should just keep focusing on fosters, because it's just an alternative to save animals. The way that I think of it, and like the grand scheme that I have in my head, is we need to have like various options for animals. So when an animal's coming in, it needs to have plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, whether it's a rescue, whether it's an adoption event, whether it's through the fostering program or a transport program. We need to offer as many options for this particular animal. And I think we need to come to some sort of resolution, whether it's rescue groups or whether it's a transport partner that we have, and we need to meet, in the middle. And at the very end, we just need to take the animal out. So with the foster program that we have, I'm very open. With the adoption events that we have, I'm very open. I release every single hold. I let anyone get any animal. I have no problem with it.
Kathy, how many, do you know the number off the top of your head of rescues that Animal Services has?
Over 70.
Yeah.
Anybody else that has a similar program? I'm not so sure. Happens to do it.
We're doing it on a very, very small scale. And right now, helping us with animals that are harder to place, get them out of the shelter, into the home and network them in a different way, get them up where more people are away from us. And one of the things that's working well for us right now is educating these people who often enough might be first-time fosters as well, also first-time tied to Shelby Community, about what open adoption means.
Yeah.
And what happens if they come across somebody that their red flags go up, they don't feel like it's the right fit. Before they're saying no, they know to turn them to us, what it means, we think we can find the right match, why that's important for us to do that, so that they don't compromise all the work that we're trying to push with open adoptions. And instead of giving that no out, they just send people to us to find the right match, and they can keep doing what they're doing with less stress.
And I think you should continue, because that's exactly how we started with the ambassador program. We started with like 3. It was like an embarrassing number to kind of report now that I'm viewing like 40 plus. But that's exactly how we started. And if you come to think about whether you're going to have opposition from some of your employees or maybe some of your staff members, just disregard that, because you're really not going to. When we started this program, it was literally me and a handful of people. And now we have individuals that come up to me and say, Louis, you know what, can you put this animal in foster care? We have individuals that are in the floor or maybe through the intake areas where they're telling people, you know what, this is an option. And we have employees participating, engaging in this program. We have maybe 16 to 20 employees that are constantly doing this now. And they know what I'm looking for. And they know how to do the process and the procedures and the protocol in place. At the same time, we're building an incentive program for employees. Our particular county, we have about 30,000 plus employees. So we were speaking to the director about maybe tapping into some of those individuals and maybe offering them AD time for fostering opportunities. So let's assume that you have one animal in foster care for a month, you get 8 hours of AD time. That's a great incentive for them. At the same time, we have a partnership with the University of Miami Jackson Health Memorial System. They have another 30,000 employees. And we partner a lot of times with our communications department where we send newsletters, and that's the next step where I want to get into. On their newsletters, we typically include events, but now what we want to start kind of doing is doing a marketing push and a campaign for just fostering. And that's something that the director, he's really interested in doing, and I think that's something that we're definitely going to capitalize on next.
It sounds to me that the key to success in this program is having the right person like you who's willing to think outside the box, be open, and, I mean, it's a lot of work, but it sounds like that's the key to the success or failure of this kind of program.
It is.
It's gotta be somebody who's really, well, it's their passion, and
And
it
it
sounds
sounds-
like that.
Thank you.
Well, it sounds like you have to be willing to plow through the barriers. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we all find that the biggest barriers in our organizations, with all due respect, are staff. When we're doing innovative and new and different things, it's this pushback and resistance of, well, we can't do this, or we've done this, or we've tried this. And I think you just have to be fearless and
Yeah.
be able to plow through the barriers and,
Yeah, you really have to look outside of the box. Like,
yeah.
one of my biggest thing was having the additional support as far as manpower to kind of upkeep an inventory level of almost 200 animals. But I started asking questions. I started looking at different models, and then that's when I started building relationships with some of our programmers and our database, and that just made my job a lot easier. Like, it literally took at least 75% of the workload that I used to do off. So I think that's something that we really need to focus on. At the same time, even like when you're trying to do adoption events or you're trying to do things like that, and you're trying to build maybe local or national partnerships, you should not be afraid of reaching out to individuals. We've done adoption events with ESPN, with huge universities within our county, University of Miami. We've done them with the Miami Marlins. For the first time about a year and a half, we were on the national news, on Fox News. And these are things that we started doing just by taking it one step at a time and not being afraid. And just reaching out to these individuals. And not having that fear of, the magnitude of an adoption event that holds maybe 200 to 300 animals, that sounds scary. And I don't have that mindset. I just really like to go, and just do it. And I'd have to say that everyone in our shelter has that same mindset. From Michael to Kathy to every individual that I work with, they're very supportive. And we all have that open-minded concept. So I think that's what's really working for us. We're willing to try whatever we want. And we're willing to, kind of jump through the hurdles and just continue if it doesn't work out.
Fearless leaders, I love it. I would love to see you take this presentation, make an article for the NACA News, so that this, which is a fairly new concept to open admission animal services, out there and get them to start dialoguing, because there's some amazing new changes happening. And that's a wonderful publication that goes to a lot of people who never get the opportunities to go to other type of conferences and programs. So please think about that.
Yeah, I will. I will.
I found it interesting, if any of you, I don't know if any of you were in Keita and Mary Ann's workshop yesterday, and she was talking about finding the right person. It sounds like you need the person who doesn't know what they can't do to be in this position, and then you can just do anything.
Well, it's kind of funny, when I came in on board, it was about 2 years ago, I knew nothing about animal advocacy. I knew nothing about veterinarian services. I came under Michael's wing, and I learned a lot from him, and I learned a lot from Kathy. And I was just an individual that just wanted to kind of understand the concepts and kind of, build things around it and just build new things. Literally, the conversation that I had with my director where he told me, I want you to increase live release and change the perception of the shelter, that's always stayed with me in everything that I do. And I think this is where I found the passion for some of the things that I do.
Yeah, it is a culture there of how can we say yes rather than no. From the director, who is also brand new, to the vets who are mostly brand new, to a bunch of the leads and supervisors who are brand new. So it's been really nice.
How many of you would characterize your adoption programs as open adoptions? Because I think that's the other component aside from a staff member who's willing and eager and creative and doesn't see barriers. If you're organizationally not comfortable relinquishing some control over the qualifications that someone has to have to take an animal from you, it's going to be very hard to then let an individual outside of your shelter do that work. And I remember when I was down last time, we got in some applications and some checks and things from completed adoptions, and I was asking Michael about what leeway do people have, and I think there was at least one person who does home visits. So there's this, in some cases, even a disconnect with your own. You may have a particularly open process, and you engage an adoption ambassador who does home visits for their animals. And how do you manage the variety? You've got your fear coming through on one end of somebody selling dogs, and then you might have on the other end somebody who is so restrictive that they're requiring FBI background checks on the dog. How do you manage the sort of vast spectrum?
As far as like the people that are onboarding with us,
Yeah.
I mean, I think even like when I have conversations with individuals as far as like who are we adopting out to, or who are some of our partners, or why do we do certain things, I think a lot of people that work in our type of industry, they really lost that human factor. I really haven't, so I really like to know that I trust in individuals. So whenever I have an individual approach me about foster opportunities or ambassador opportunities, I really take that seriously. And we have different systems and processes in place to kind of catch them if they're going or deviating offline. So I like to kind of go with it. I like to give everyone an opportunity. I can't say the program is perfect and hasn't yielded a negative situation, because it has plenty of times, but we address them right there on the spot, and we can't let that be a roadblock.
I think just as a sort of comment, and we can wrap early if there aren't additional questions, but I think it was about 2 years ago when I first started going out to Miami and working with the crew down there. And at the time, the shelter had experienced a significant amount of negative publicity, very, very broadly distributed negative publicity. Nasty stuff in the community about the same, if not slightly exaggerated, Facebook negative stuff that some of you have probably experienced. And what struck me, I live in northern Vermont, 40 miles from the Canadian border, and so Miami's pretty different for me. And what I wondered was, how will a shelter in a community this size, with the reputation that it has, ever recover from that community perception? How will they engage their community in a way that asks them to help and that actually gets people to respond to that? And I am blown away every time I go down there at at the complete turnaround that seems to have happened in the community. And I think the single, if there is a single action that's been to credit for that change, it's been the leadership's willingness to open the doors in every possible way to the community and say, you're right, this is our problem together, and the only solution is going to be if we work on this together. And so people who were vocal opponents of the shelter are now allies. And it doesn't mean they still don't occasionally gripe and say nasty things in the public, but in the meantime, they're still working to save animals, and that willingness to open the doors to rescue groups, which was not the case, to individuals who are willing to place in their homes, which was not the case, to adopters who may not be perfect in our eyes, was not the case. And I think it's an easier thing to say than to do, but at the end of the day, the community engagement that I think we see regularly through programs like this in Miami is pretty spectacular. And they stumble and fall and have to deal with some icky stuff every once in a while, but it's pretty extraordinary.
It's worth that, yeah.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Well done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.